Hello students, this is Kulpreet. I welcome you to the Easy English class. Today I am going to elaborate the chapter The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Let's talk about the author first. His name is Alphonse Daudet. He is considered to be one of the most iconic names in French literature. Daudet was born in Nimes, France in 1840. Do you know, students, that in 1857 he started his career as a school teacher, but he abandoned that profession. Then Alfonso began to write his poems, and his collection was published in a book called Les Amours. Now let's go with author in 18th century, where Franco-Prussian war was going on, and the year was 1870, where Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck ordered the Prussian army to invade France. Prussia, now known as Germany. This war is known as the most dramatic conflict in the history of Europe. The French districts of Alsace and Lorraine captured by Germany. Now, these two districts were merely a puppet, and the string was in the hands of new rulers, who discontinued the teachings of French and imposed German in the schools of these two districts. Here comes the theme of lesson: love for one's motherland and freedom of language. Now, the main characters of the story: Mr. Hamel, a French language teacher, and Franz, one of his students. This story highlights the dismay of a teacher, his students, and the villager. Now, the description of the story. Here, the narrator of the story is a young school-going boy named Franz. Franz was late for his school that day. He was scared, and his old teacher, Mr. Hamel, had announced the previous day that he would test them on the topic participles. And Franz did not know anything at all. So instead of going to school, he thought of running away and enjoy the warm and bright weather, where the birds were chirping, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. But soon Franz controlled his temptation and chose to attend the school. On his way, when he passed the town hall, he noticed a crowd at the bulletin board. Bulletin board is just like a notice board, where the important news and information being put up, like news of lost battles, the orders of commanding officers. This shows that day also some bad news had been put up there. As Franz was confused and was in hurry, a blacksmith watcher, one of the common man, stood in the crowd, saw him rushing by. Watcher says to Franz not to go in such a hurry, boy, as he has plenty of time now. Here, I want to tell you, children, that Watcher said it ironically. It means he wanted to tell Franz that French would no longer be taught in the schools due to the order came from Berlin. But Franz ignored him because he thought that Watcher is making fun of him. When Franz reached outside the school building, he was bewildered. He was surprised at the silence all around, and he noticed many unusual things that day. Usually, when school began, what happens? There was a lot of noise, like moving of desks, children repeating their lessons, and teachers striking the table. But that day, the silence compelled Franz to think, was it Sunday? Franz was getting more and more confused. He waited for the noises to come outside the school or from the class. But finally, he decided to go inside the class. But now, as he entered inside the class, he was totally amazed when he was not being punished by his cranky teacher, Mr. Hamel. Moreover, Mr. Hamel regretted having begun his class without Franz. After some time, when Franz became comfortable, he observed that their teacher, Mr. Hamel, had worn his ceremonial attire, which he normally wore on inspection and prize distribution days. And the most unexpected thing for poor Franz was that the last benches of the classroom were occupied by senior village men like Mr. Hosser, the retired mayor, and many more. Then suddenly, the announcement made by the teacher, Mr. Hamel, that here is an order came from Berlin to stop teaching French, and this was their last French lesson. This was a shocking declaration for poor Franz. After listening such a shocking news, he began to love his teacher, his classroom. Moreover, he started liking his books, just like his old friends. It is the unspoken reality, children, that friends become sweeter when they depart from us. Now he got to know all his answers about the news being put up on the bulletin board, why Mr. Hamel wore his fine clothes that day, and the reason the village people gathered there. While Franz was thinking all this, his name had been called out by his teacher to recite the topic of participle. But unfortunately, as we know, Franz did not know anything about the topic. So he got mixed up on the very first word. He was ashamed, and Mr. Hamel, to see his students' unsatisfactory progress in studies, he blamed the people of Alsace for their habit of putting off learning some other time in future. He blamed parents for not taking interest in their ward's studies. Moreover, he criticized himself as well for not being sincere and gave the students a holiday, sent them for fishing, watering his plants. This shows he was a loyal and an honest person. After that, Mr. Hamel started talking about the importance of mother tongue, because mother tongue acts as a binding force among these countrymen. He said, if the person knows his mother tongues well, no one can enslave him. Then the teacher took a grammar lesson. Franz was surprised that he understood the lesson that day with very ease. Mr. Hamel was also explaining the lesson with lot of patience. Mr. Hamel gave the students new notebooks. On them, France Alsace, beautifully written. Franz realized that there was an air of patriotism in the class, where entire class was busy in writing. Suddenly, Franz heard pigeons cooing on the roof of the classroom and thought, if the Prussian would impose a ban on their cooing language as well, it means he considered it senseless as snatching the pigeon's right to coo. Just then, the clock at the church struck 12, and at the same moment, the Prussian soldiers who were returning from the drill was heard. On the other side, Mr. Hamel's face became dull, as the time had come to bid farewell to his students. Teacher wanted to speak but could not, as he was overpowered by his emotions. Franz felt that the teacher must be heartbroken and to be sent away from a place where he had spent 40 years of his lifespan. Mr. Hamel turned to the blackboard and wrote, Vive la France. It means, long live France. At last, he bent towards the wall and without speaking anything, he dismissed the class by showcasing the hand gestures. Thank you.